I am going to give you a full breakdown of how I get my clients' bar muscle ups starting from zero. We'll take a look at the exact drills that I use and the reasons why they're effective at achieving what they're designed to. So without further ado, let's get stuck into it. Firstly, we'll take a look at what a perfect end product, a finished article bar muscle up looks like, so we can understand exactly what the qualities are and the different positions are that we need to develop.
Stop right there, but just for a second, important interjection. Everything I'm about to go through in this video is assuming you have sufficient levels of foundational strict strength. Now, there's a few different things which combine together to give you that foundational strict strength, but the best marker for that is just looking at our strict pull-up capacity. For men, I'm going to say we need at least 8 strict pull-ups. For females, I'm going to say we need 5 strict unassisted pull-ups.
So from the top, we've got the kip. Essentially, that's moving from the hollow body position to the arch position. It's where we generate a lot of our momentum. From there, we're going to move out of that arch position. We're going to start to travel backwards while we push down on the bar with straight arms. And we're going to start to lift our legs, putting our hips into flexion, which sets us up for our next step, which is hip extension. This is basically where we get the rest of our power to perform the movement. We slam our legs down to extend the hips, and that gives us vertical momentum. From there, we've got a transition where our upper body comes over the bar, and there we simply press out to fully extend the arms and finish the movement. So now we've got a loose idea on the various different parts of the movement. Let's break them down, take a look at some specific drills, and have a look at what we're looking for within those. So what is the kip? As I mentioned, we're moving from what is known as the hollow body position to the arch position to generate most of our momentum. And generally we want to start a little bit further behind the bar when we jump and catch the bar, so that we can get our feet in front of the bar and keep our hips slightly behind it, again to try and create that soft C position. Something to think about here is tension in your lower body to help keep your legs nice and straight. Tension in your lower abdomen is obviously going to help you to get those feet in front of you while your hips are behind you as well. Then we're going to move forwards and ideally aggressively into that arch position, which is basically the opposite of that. It's the opposite of a soft C, where we've got our chest and our hips forwards, but our feet behind us. And an important one to remember for this is a bit of a common theme which I find with my coaching. I'm telling people all the time to keep their legs straight in their arch position. And this comes down to a lot of people knowing or thinking they know how to kip, but in reality, they're losing a lot of tension, and therefore they are losing a lot of the momentum that they're putting into this kip as a result of bending at the knee and breaking that chain. So keeping those legs straight helps to keep the levers long, helps you to maintain tension and therefore momentum. Basically, we want all of that hard work that we're putting into the movement to be reciprocated for us later on in the movement, and this is your first opportunity to fail that if you start bending your legs. So remember that straight legs, if that's for yourself or you're coaching someone else, straight legs in that arch position will really fare you well. Now, a lot of people, like I said, they think they know how to kip, or they think they know how to kip sufficiently. A lot of the time, people need to move back down this timeline to really refine their kip. And something that can help people is working in a shorter range of motion. So they can sometimes be known as beat swings, where we're repeatedly performing a kip swing, but in the small range of motion, to really develop control, as well as a bit of speed and ability to maintain tension between those two positions. Like everything, if you can't display a good level of control between the two positions, you can't really expect to go and perform a super dynamic movement that relies on the quality of these positions being good and being effective. So I often get people to shorten the range of motion to start with, to really develop that ability, develop that control. And you can even go to the extent of using a metronome to do so, keeping you honest to the different positions that you need to move between. And yeah, that can be a really helpful drill. So here we've got kip swings to a slightly bigger range of motion, we've got beat swings to a slightly shorter range of motion, and we've even got beat swings to a metronome to really develop that speed, timing and control. Next up, we need to learn how to extend our hips. As we've established, that's an important part of the process, and the easiest and most basic way to do this is with a banded hip extension drill. So we need a dumbbell, we need a wall, and we need a very light band. We're going to set up with a dumbbell behind us. We're going to set up the band around the handle of the dumbbell, And we are going to go over to the wall and make our knees 90 degrees with not only the wall, but also our hips. Then from here, we're going to straighten out our legs and we're going to have 2 calls to the movement. First one is going to be toes. That's going to remind us to bring our toes and our whole leg essentially away from the wall. And that is replicating, putting us in hip flexion. And the second one is going to just be go, wall, whatever you want to call it. Let's call it go for now. So we're going to have toes and go. So when we say go, we're going to slam our legs, keeping them nice and straight, to the wall. That, as we've kind of established already, is going to extend our hips, and that's going to help us to practice what we need to do to initiate that hip extension. And it's going to be a nice reminder that we're not actually scooping our hips up, we are slamming our legs down, and we extend our hips as a result of that. And that's going to be an important point that we can carry over into our more dynamic practices when we are actually hanging from the bar. Now, what's left is to discuss what we're doing with our hands. Our hands are going to start out in front of our chest with the band in them, and then as we slam our legs to the wall on the call of go, we're also going to slam our hands down to our hips. Now, there's not a great deal of resistance there. There really shouldn't be. Like I said, the band needs to be very, very light. This is just a very, very small introduction of what we need to be doing with pushing down on the bar with straight arms. This is more so a coordination thing. It's not really providing too much resistance or anything like that, but just to get us used to performing those 2 things at the same time. If someone is really struggling, coming back to simply slamming the legs to the wall with nothing overhead, no band whatsoever, is completely fine as well. So long as we are focusing on, like I've mentioned already, slamming the legs to the wall and not scooping the hips up. Yes, the hips will come up anyway as a result of it, but just remembering that that's not the focus. Moving on to our second drill of learning the hip extension. This is where that straight arm push down on the bar becomes a little bit more effective, basically. We're going to set up something called the low bar kip glide drill. We need a barbell in a pretty low position on the rig. Obviously, it's going to change depending on height and anatomy for each person. We're going to band it in there just for safety. And we're going to set up, sat on the floor, probably a little bit further forwards than you would first think. And we are going to start by lifting our legs again, similar to the way that we lift our legs away from the wall in the banded hip extension drill. But we're simultaneously going to push down on that barbell now. And this is actually going to form part of a complex, and this is a really good teaching tool to get us used to how effective pushing down on the bar with straight arms can be while lifting the legs. Now, we're going to push down on the bar, we lift our legs, and we're going to feel ourselves travel backwards underneath the bar purely as a result of those 2 things. And it's always good to start this low bar kip glide drill with a few of those reps. Like I said, I like to use it as a complex, so I'll get someone to do one of those reps, at least one, before then going into a rep where instead of just pushing down the bar and lifting the legs, we're also going to lift the legs, push down on the bar, but then once our legs reach the highest point, we're going to slam our legs down to the floor, just like we slammed our legs to the wall in the previous drill. But that is going to extend our hips, and that's going to get us traveling up towards that barbell. Now, an important caveat is that we are not necessarily looking to transition over the bar. The drill is to focus on the hip extension combined with simultaneously pushing down on the bar and getting used to how effective those things can be when combined. Transitioning over the bar is very much secondary, maybe not even secondary, really not that important when it comes to the hierarchy of what we're looking for from this movement. Sometimes people feel as though they've failed the movement or they've not done a very good job if they've not transitioned over the bar. I often am reminding people I do not care if you get up and over the bar or not. It's just a case of practicing this, what I've mentioned already, this hip flexion, hip extension, pushing down on the bar, and how it all comes together and will get you traveling not only backwards but also up towards the bar. Moving on, we've got our kipping hip extension. So just as the name suggests, we're putting everything together with our kip and our hip extension. So most of the time I like to get people to perform these in singles, and I really like to drill home the importance in the difference of the definition between a kipping hip extension and a kipping hips to bar. Like I've alluded to before, we don't want to start getting into the habit of scooping our hips up we want to get our hips and body weight to travel up as a result of hip extension. So we're not trying to necessarily get our hips to touch the bar. We are looking for a nice hollow body position, an aggressive arch position where our legs are nice and straight, and then we're going to travel up and back as we lift our legs, and then once we've reached that highest point of our legs, we're going to slam our legs down to extend the hips. You can keep the kip and hip extension in for as long as you need to, even with someone that's already got bar muscle ups. They act as a really good primer to remember exactly what you need to be doing when you go into the full movement. Moving on to our final drill, we have got the single leg assisted bar muscle up, which is exactly what it says on the tin. We're using one leg to assist us in performing a bar muscle up. This for me is more of a transition drill where we can put all of those things together that we've previously been working on. So the biggest and most important take home for this movement is that you are actually assisting yourself as little as possible with that single leg. That's why the single leg variation is so good, because the double leg variation, you can't really practically hit all of your positions. You're just jumping over the bar, to be honest. Whereas with this one, we can work on running through all of our positions with that one leg that's not assisted. So our hollow body, moving forwards into an aggressive arch, moving backwards, starting to travel up, lifting our leg, that hip extension even, and then just assisting ourselves ever so slightly with that very last transition with the assisting leg on the box. This can offer some really good real world feedback when it comes to actually seeing the difference of how the straight arm pushed down on the bar turns into a bit of a pull as you get that upper body over the bar. Then obviously you can just press out to fully extend. Then it's a case of getting into the full thing and getting some attempts. Obviously I've run through this whole process very quickly. It takes months and months to legitimately perfect things before you can move on and before it's even worthwhile trying some attempts. But once you have got a good understanding and a good proficiency of all these, there's no reason why you should be afraid of doing a full bar muscle up attempt. Some important things to remember are that when you have essentially a capacity of 0 before you've unlocked the movement, this is the equivalent of a 1 rep max. You need to enter with the same level of focus, same level of tension, same level of adherence to movement quality to really make that rep absolutely perfect, the same way you would do if it was a 1 rep max back squat or something like that. And important to almost give it the respect that you would do with the 1 rep max as well. Now, maybe you can afford a few more attempts than what you would do with a 1 rep max back squat. But at the same time, like understanding that it's going to be taxing for your body. You are really going to have to focus. You're really going to have to bring a big level of tension to everything. So just bear that in mind when you are attempting things. And off the back of that, quite obviously, you should be attempting in singles. I don't like to see people hanging onto the bar for 5-6 kip swings just to build momentum until they get feeling comfortable to do so. Realistically, you should be able to generate enough momentum from that initial kip swing. And if you can't, I would start to think, maybe there's a bit of a movement error in there. Maybe you need to go back down the timeline and refine that kip. Like I've alluded to before, it's a very common error. And something else that can help for some first time attempts is just slightly elevating your start position. Particularly if the athlete is not very tall, starting from a slightly elevated position is going to help them to generate a little bit more momentum as they do come into that kip. So as they start that hollow body position, it can be slightly more effective and it can have the knock-on effect as they go into that arch position as well. As you can see, I tend to keep the process for giving progressions pretty lean. I'm more lean towards if someone has got an inefficiency somewhere, I'm not really trying to offer a banded drill to address that. I'm saying go back down one step on this timeline, absolutely perfect that movement, and then we can start to take a look at moving back up that timeline again. When it comes to bands, I am not totally against the idea of someone getting the feeling of what it's like to transition up over the bar if they previously can't, or if they've really been struggling. But it's important to bear in mind that it's definitely not going to be the movement that is a main driver for adaptation or is really going to unlock that next level of proficiency for you. I think it's important to remember the time and the place for those kind of heavily assisted movements. And that is it. I hope you've enjoyed me running you through my process of getting people their first bar muscle ups. Now it does change. This is the process that I have been using most recently to get people good results. But you know, if I do find that something starts to work better, then I will tweak it. But hopefully you can use it to implement, whether it's with yourself or with your clients, to perfect the positions needed and ultimately the bar muscle. And if you are in the market for some free downloadable programs, there's going to be a button around here somewhere associated with getting your hands on those. And likewise, if you're interested in working with me one-to-one, there's going to be a button to book a call there as well.